Welcome to week 2 of the fantasy football season. It's time for this week's episode of 3 and Out. I fantasy hate Josh Allen, and it's time you do too. I'm your co-host, Wayne Cavadi, and I'm excited because, as you can see, we have a very special guest today. But before we get to him, let's welcome back the other two-thirds of my fantasy brain, Chris Fiumano and Mike Dunton. Fanduel Fee, Dunton, how we doing?
Doing all right. My fantasy team scored a lot of points, but lost to the team that scored the most points in the league, Of course.
Yeah, and I had a terrible fantasy week and a terrible real life week.
Well, you are, yeah. Man.
On to week two. So the big thing about week 2 that we're excited about, of course, if you've listened to our show in the past, you know that week 2 is Fanduel Fee's birthday bash. Your birthday is this week. So we thought it appropriate to talk DFS this week because you're Fanduel Fee. So this other gentleman you see on the screen, he's one of the leading DFS experts on the interwebs and gets the 3 and Out stamp of approval as a guy we've read and followed for a really long time. So ladies and degenerates, welcome Jordan Vanek to the show. Jordan, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, man. I can't say my week 1 went any better than the rest of you guys, but hopefully week 2 goes better now that we've got some data to actually look into.
Yeah, and it's all about the data. And before we get to diving into roster construction and the stuff that you look at, because the stuff that you look at blows my mind, but we'll get to that in a second. How about just a little, you're on the 33rd team, which, as you can see in his background, it's an amazing spot to land. I mean, and the resources of people you get to just hear ideas from, I'm sure, is amazing. Just tell us briefly, quickly, how you wound up there.
So originally, I went to the University of Central Florida. I was a player personnel intern there, basically recruiting players for the UCF football team. When I was there, we were quote unquote the national champion. Not exactly fully bought into that, but got to see a lot of cool things behind the scenes. Got to learn how to cut up film. Got to learn how to read some defenses. Get to hear from some of these coaches. And cut up guys like Dylan Gabriel, who's now at Oklahoma throwing a bunch of touchdowns, Ryan O'Keefe, who's now at Boston College. So I'm very familiar with the football side of things. Thought I wanted to be a scout. So I went to Dan Hartman's Scouting Academy, where I cut up players and learned more in depth about the game. But DFS has always been my strong suit. When I was 18 years old, I hit my first lineup, but just up until 2 years ago, I had stayed away from making content and kind of doing things a little bit behind the scenes and jumped into content with gridiron ratings, was there for a little bit, and then took my talents to 4for4 and Stochastic. And this past year, I joined Josh Larkey, creating a new fantasy and DFS team. And I decided that I wanted to be paired with a spot where I could bring football analysis as well as kind of the data analytics side of things, which the 33rd team provides. We have a ton of content on the site and just a lot of really good football minds to bounce ideas off of when I have them. Like today, Andy Benoit, who is a show with Greg Cassell, we were talking about some of the new changes from this past weekend, and he found some of the data points that I was finding very interesting. So very cool to see the back and forth with that.
Yeah, it's awesome to be on a big team like that, and especially with people that have been around the game so much. So for our longtime listeners, basically what you just heard is we throw darts and Jordan has spreadsheet among spreadsheet, and he's the guy to listen to, is what we're telling you. So let's talk a little bit about the making the DFS lineup, right? If you read your tweets, which I do, it like sometimes I get so deep into them, I just start laughing. I kind of picture you're like Morgan Freeman and Batman, right? And you just have all these screens in front of you, and you have sights on everything in football. And you'll read one of your tweets, and I'm just making this one up. It'll be like, Peyton Manning's facing the Bucks, and they play cover 2 80% of the time. The last time Peyton Manning faced a cover 2, and you just know these things. So talk a little bit about the research that you do and what goes into making all of the research that goes into making your DFS lineup.
So there's a lot that goes into any given play. When you're looking at personnel usage, you're looking at, certain things of alignment, where they're targeting you on the defense, what the quarterback likes, what the quarterback is seeing. And this past weekend, the perfect example of this is the Miami Dolphins and the San Francisco 49ers. Two offenses that came out right out the gates, firing on all cylinders. And the one thing that they're doing that nobody else in the NFL is doing is running 21 personnel. For those unaware of it, it's 2 running backs, quote unquote running backs, Alec Ingold and Juszczyk are fullbacks, with 1 tight end on the field. Defenses, back in the day, we would be able to counter this pretty easily. This was a standard in the NFL. They would go to their 3-4-4-3 scheme. But the problem is, if you do that, you end up with Khalil Mack covering Tyreek Hill in the slot, which happened in the Chargers game. You can go back to that play. Khalil Mack's looking to the sidelines like, why am I covering this guy? What are we doing here? Something's wrong. Something was wrong. And the Chargers, after playing their 3-4, they decided, okay, we're going to go to our nickel package and we're going to play man-to-man with 2 safeties deep, try to play this cover 2 type scheme. And Mike McDaniel countered with, okay, they took Raheem Mostert, sent him outside the numbers, and then they took Alec Ingold, sent him on the opposite side. So both linebackers in their nickel package, which there's only 2 of them on the field, went all the way to the boundary. What that leaves is the middle of the field wide open. You had Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle in the slot with Durham Smythe. Tyreek Hill ran like a little rub route with Smythe. Jalen Waddle runs a quick slant. Next thing you know, he's open, 40-yard completion. Tua loves throwing him in the middle of the field. Mike McDaniel took away all the defenders in the middle of the field and made it as easy as possible for him. And then on the flip side, you had the 49ers with the same, again, coaching tree matters huge with this, same identity, same type of system. The way they killed the Steelers was they ran the 3-4. The Steelers stayed in their 3-4 with the threat of Christian McCaffrey. So what does Kyle Shanahan do? He puts McCaffrey in the slot. He puts Juszczyk in the backfield. And he basically gives you an 11 personnel look, but McCaffrey's the slot receiver. Steelers don't have the guys to match up against that. They're getting killed consistently against it. And then Brandon Ayuk was just destroying Patrick Peterson. Richard Sherman actually just broke down one of those clips. The Steelers, when they saw this look, they were afraid of the pass at some point in the game. They started playing quarters coverage, which is like an umbrella. And what the 49ers did to counter it was they sent a double post and cleared out the room for Brandon Ayuk to be one-on-one with Patrick Peterson, and he came down with it every single time, which someone I didn't get to this weekend. Even though I love Brandon Ayuk, I was terrified of Brock Purdy's arm.
Yeah. So like with these teams, are you more comfortable in realizing, do you have to watch every game every week to see what happened? Or do you kind of know the way, like you just said, like the coaching tree matters. You kind of know how smart they are and how they'll attack things. So is it a fresh look every week for you, or do you kind of see the patterns and kind of get comfortable with some teams?
So it depends on the situation. Like Kyle Shanahan at this point in time, I know how he's going to attack things. The only thing I didn't know how he was going to go about things was with Brock Purdy's elbow. And then he had a full year with Christian McCaffrey to scheme this guy up. They're a terrifying offense because Brandon Ayuk, I've always thought of as a star receiver. I think he's the player that if we would have seen him get into an offense that wants to throw the ball 40 times a game and make him the number 1, he would be just that. But in this offense, he can just do it in a multitude of ways. I try to watch every single snap of every single game. My setup is kind of gives me the opportunity to do that. So I did see a ton of things this past weekend, but what I normally go do is I'll go through the receivers because that side of the game to me is the most intriguing and most difficult to predict. And seeing like Puka Nacua had 15 targets. If you watch that game, I think there were 3 targets that I would deem like a consistent, like something that I could see happening again. The 49ers are not going to allow what the Seahawks did. I have no idea why Seattle defended him the way they did. It was one of the most frustrating things to actually go back and look at because it's hard to argue 10 catches, 119 yards. It's easy to argue this is how they covered. It could have been anybody, like any receiver doing the thing he did. Like Ben Skronik could have done what Puka Nacua did this past weekend. It's just he was used in the role. I'm not going to take anything away from him. I'm just not paying up for or paying a 4,700 price tag on DraftKings this weekend or thinking about him on Fanduel where touchdowns are king.
Yeah. Yeah. Fee, I know you were impressed with the Aaron Jones call.
Yeah, I the only real question I had is I looked at your article, which had your lineup on it, and it was the Aaron Jones call. I just wanted to hear how you got to that.
So Tremaine Edmonds and Kaiser White are two linebackers that unbelievable in coverage. If you're playing a Tampa 2 type scheme, they could do some things rangy, wild. But Tremaine Edmonds and Kaiser White aren't good when they have to shed blocks. For me, I looked at the Packers offensive line being fully healthy, fully ready to go against this Bears defensive line that I think is probably the worst in football to this point. And I saw the plus matchup there. And then I'm thinking to myself, like screens and getting, Aaron Jones going is kind of the way the Packers need to go about things. It was the loss of Christian Watson. And you think about the Shanahan scheme or the coaching tree. So you had Shanahan, you had Mike McDaniel, you've got LaFleur, who's in Green Bay. Sean McVay was a part of this group as well. They get their best players the ball. That is just how they operate. And it sounds so simplistic, but that's the way I go about things. Like last season, arguing with people that Mike McDaniel being the run game quarter means nothing. Deebo Samuel is not, there's no Deebo role with this roster. Arguing that Tua was going to be the guy and being the one who was with him on the Ravens game was nice to have that victory and continue playing Tua throughout the season, thinking his efficiency is going to stay the same because these guys are just their best players. You're going to get on the ball. I look at it that way. Like if Christian Watson was playing, I wouldn't have been as heavy on Aaron Jones. But in this particular matchup, like Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, none of those guys to me have the talent level of Aaron Jones, and I'm not a fan of AJ Dillon.
Yeah. Is there overlap from week to week? Like the Bucks are playing the Bears this week, right? So, you mentioned how the Bears don't really have a very good defensive line. Is there any kind of way where you could fit in, some sort of Bucks player into a lineup, to exploit that?
Yeah, I mean, Rashad White is definitely a plus matchup this week. They couldn't get it going against Brian Flores, but Brian Flores blitzes the house, similar to the same way the Bucks do things. Both the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Vikings had the highest blitz rates this past weekend. So I'm looking at who's going to get it done against the blitz. That's kind of the way I operate when it comes to those defenses. But as far as the Bears defense in general, they're going to be a team that's like the ground game is just going to beat them. The only fear for Rashad White is I don't know how much better he is than Sean Tucker. Sean Tucker was a guy at Syracuse that I thought was going to be a top day 2 pick in this upcoming draft. And then all the medical flags and everything he had to deal with during that process destroyed his stock. So I stay away. I usually am like, NFL is telling me this guy is just not going to be healthy or whatever the case may be. I can't really buy into that. But he looked pretty good in his few, looks out there. And Rashad White did not at all.
When if you're like triple stacking and you want to get 3 people into the mix, I know you do all this research. Is there ever an instance where kind of the value of being able to get 3 guys into the mix, you kind of convince yourself that it's the right play just because of the value you have and maybe freeing up a comeback guy because of that value?
So when it comes to stacking, I always try to go 3 players into one offense. I'm not afraid to play my running back with my quarterback. A lot of people get timid about that situation, but the reality is if your quarterback and receiver are hitting at a high pace, the running back, you're securing the touchdowns. You're essentially getting all the touchdowns from that game. And then as far as running it back, like I like to run back with 2 people. I like to target high pace game environments. Opportunity is like the way you get things done. Last season, I beat myself up about not double stack or double running it back in the Lions Seahawks game where they went as crazy as they did because I played Geno with DK and Tyler Lockett. And then the run back I had was lucky enough, TJ Hawkinson, who was super high on that week. And my game stack got the environment I wanted. I don't know what the thought process was to not get two run backs in that one, but normally I want to target games where I'm getting 2 guys on the flip.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's sometimes I want to quadruple stack. I won't lie, but that's just crazy talk. Okay, so before we get to some of your picks for the week, every week FanDuel Fee gives us some stacks. So I thought it would be fun for him to kind of do our normal thing where he tells us our stacks and you kind of think, I know you haven't done all your research yet, but just kind of some thoughts on what he does, and then we'll let you get to some of your ideas. So Fee, are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
All right, go for it.
I don't know if they're any good, but I'm ready. All right, so I'm gonna start it off. I got a Buffalo stack. I got Josh Allen and Gabe Davis going against the Raiders this week. Gabe Davis is only 6,500, and this is all FanDuel. I know you're kind of a little more DraftKings, but this is all FanDuel for me. Gabe Davis is 6,500. He's fairly low on the salary. Josh Allen 9,200, fairly high. Or one of the most salaried players. So that's my first one. My second one is Trevor Lawrence with Jacksonville. I got him with Calvin Ridley, but I also really like Zay Jones this week. But again, Trevor's only 7,800. Calvin's 8,300. Zay Jones is a little cheaper. He's in the 6K range. And then my third stack, which is actually the one I really like the most, I have Jared Goff, because I really like the Detroit-Seattle game this week. Goff is only 7,300. Amon-Ra, St. Brown, I think he's like the third highest salaried receiver at 8,100. But I also like comebacks with Tyler Lockett and, potentially even DK Metcalf. So the Detroit-Seattle game is really one of my favorites this week.
So starting off with that Josh Allen stack, I do have a lot of love for Gabe Davis in this matchup. He was there when I was at UCF, so I have a little biasy towards Gabe and him being hopefully good. That last game against the Jets, he's just not capable of beating the top end corners. People don't think of DJ Reed as a top end corner, but he is. He's one of the best corners in the game. People don't also see that Sauce Gardner doesn't travel, and that's the reason. Like, they don't need to travel Sauce Gardner when they have a corner on the other side that's capable of getting things done. Bills, from a systematic standpoint, they ran a lot more 12 personnel, which will keep with two tight ends on the field, with Kincaid basically playing more slot role and obviously Dawson Knox staying in line. What that will do is keep the Raiders into a cover 1, cover 3 scheme, which is what Josh Allen wants to see and throw down the field. The Jets said, you can run the ball. We're going to stick in our quarters coverage because that's just how Saleh thinks and that's how he plays things. And Saleh actually, that plays into the hand of him. Him and D'Amico Ryans do this one thing where they love to use 3 safeties, and having a third safety and 2 tight end sets is the way you can kind of counter the run game as well as the pass game. But this Raiders matchup, I think Gabe can get it done down the field. I love running it back with Josh Jacobs. Found out stat today that I didn't really look into defensive personnel usage with the Bills for some reason until today, where they basically live in nickel, which is 5 defensive backs on the field. They do not run it. They don't bring an extra linebacker on the field. They lost Tremaine Edmonds. We've already seen this run defense be really, really bad. So Josh Jacobs, for me, is a guy that I'm thinking gets over 100 yards, finds the end zone, because Jimmy Garoppolo, he wants to hand the ball off. Like, he does not want to sit back and throw the ball 40 times a game. So I think the Raiders in this one, they play fullbacks. They go 2 tight ends. I think Josh Jacobs has a big day on the ground. So I do like the Josh Allen call. The Trevor Lawrence call for me is a little scary just because I think the Kansas City Chiefs cornerback room is one of the best in football. I grew up with Calvin Ridley. I've seen him since he was 12, 13 years old. This is a game where L'Jarius Sneed and Trent McDuffie are corners that I could see him getting some issues with, just because they can kind of match his long speed and be a little bit more physical with him. I think the Jaguars want to get this game done on the ground. That's just the best offense against Patrick Mahomes. So you're going to see a lot of Tank Bigsby, who struggled a little bit in that Colts game, but got it going at the end. And then you got, obviously, Travis Etienne. I know they got back Chris Jones. Game shape and actually being on the field is something that's always interesting with guys like this. And even with Chris Jones, I don't know if they're going to be able to dominate the trenches in this matchup Jaguars also have a little bit of concerns with their tackle play. Jim Schwartz is going to blitz them, and these two tackles aren't exactly great at protecting. They need Cam Robinson to come back. And then the third one was Jared Goff?
Detroit.
Right?
Yeah, Goff. Yep.
So Jared Goff, the player I'd also add into that is Jahmyr Gibbs. As I said, I believe about the 21 personnel with 2 running backs on the field. Detroit's going to do that. It's going to be with Gibbs and it's going to be with Montgomery. So it's a little bit different than Juszczyk and Ingold, but it's going to cause some issues. I don't know why they ran Marvin Jones as much as they did in that first game. I saw him washed kind of with the Jaguars game, and then that first game against the Chiefs, it's rough watching him out there personally. So I think it's going to be a lot of 21 personnel, and you're going to see Laporta, Amon-Ra, and Josh Reynolds. And once Jamison Williams comes back, that's going to be a deadly combo there. So I would add Jahmyr Gibbs to that. I like DK Metcalf as a run back. The only problem with Detroit is they're not the same secondary. The last year metrics don't mean anything to me. They're just much improved. They have 5 new starters from safety, all like safeties to corners, all way better players than they had this past season. I would expect DK Metcalf to have a lot more issues in this one with Emmanuel Mosley, who comes over from San Fran, but he did get the best of them in their playoff matchup. I just don't know if he's going to have that playoff, energy going into this game. I know they're coming off a loss. They lost their left tackle. They lost their right tackle. So the down the field stuff is a little concerning, but overall, people thinking Detroit's the last year's Detroit defense it's just not the same secondary. They play so much different, so much more aggressive.
What do you think about Christian Kirk? You think is he the 5th option there now?
So they told us that in game 1. But I also don't think they needed to go 11 against them. It was, for me, I've been touting Calvin Ridley all offseason. I don't think I have a single Christian Kirk share anywhere, because I felt like I looked into just watching him, and just last season it made a lot of sense. This season Calvin does the same things he does, but just better and down the field, more explosive. And also Doug Peterson loves going 2 tight ends. Like that's what Doug Peterson was in Philly with Zach Ertz and Goddard, and I believe they had Brent Selleck for a few years with Doug. It's kind of like that's where they want to go. Evan Ingram's a great one to have, and they brought in Brennan Strang, and also Evan Ingram's a really, really good slot player. So Calvin on the outside with Zay Jones is probably what we're going to see. I think Kirk obviously gets a lot more run in this game against the Chiefs, but if we're talking about matchups, I don't want 3 corners on the field for the Chiefs because I think they're just much better. I would rather have another linebacker out there, which is what Detroit did against them, and they threw so much better out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I know, Fee, you were talking to me about the Purdy stack too. I like that one too. I could triple stack that with McCaffrey. I mean, and I don't know anything about DFS. I just know that I like to find a way to get McCaffrey into a lineup. What do you think about that one?
With Purdy, I mean, yeah, it's easy to their weapons and what they can do like on any given slate. The Rams performed extremely well against Seattle. This is just a different monster. The only thing that concerns me is like, do they need to do it? Do they need to exploit them like this? Like usually in the Kyle Shanahan games that I want a lot of the pieces, I'm hoping the other team's performing at some level. But in this one with Matt Stafford forces a lot of things. I could see the 49ers defense coming away with picks and interceptions and kind of similar to the way they played against Pittsburgh, but we don't see so centralized stuff with Ayuk and McCaffrey going as crazy as they did. Deebo Samuel's the one actually at receiver that I prefer in this matchup. The one thing the Rams struggle with and Seattle couldn't attack because they don't have the players for it is the sidelines, like that are east to west kind of running style, or even just kind of quick screens and stuff. That's where Deebo Samuel can make them pay, and he's done it plenty of times against the Rams.
Yeah, we actually talked about Deebo being more effective that way last week. So moving on, I know, again, we know that you still have work to do tonight and your articles don't come out, but are there any other stacks that you've been able to look at this week that you kind of like?
So Justin Herbert against the Titans. Everybody looks at last season and, oh, well, he didn't exactly perform. He threw 2 picks. He completed like 70% of his passes for over 300 yards. Obviously, he didn't perform against Miami. That's because Vic Fangio doesn't let you throw the ball. Vic Fangio is built upon, I am going to let you run. You can run all day long. You're eventually going to hold me or eventually have a negative play. And with the offense that they have in Miami, that's the best way to play. Like, don't let teams throw because eventually they're going to have to stop running because Mike McDaniel has 30 on him. So for me, the Chargers, they want to throw the ball down the field. They tried to against Miami. The Titans, their secondary still really bad. The one thing they have is a really, really good pass rush. But as we saw with the Chargers, their offensive line's healthy. This is the first time we're seeing Herbert play with a really healthy offensive line, and they lived up to it in that first game. They protected him the entire game. Obviously, towards the end of it, some sacks, but that's because Vic Fangio just kind of schemed up some great plays and great moments. You could check out Cody Alexander for some in-depth breakdown on that blitz that he ran to the end of the game where it was perfectly executed. There is nothing Herbert can do about it. But in this matchup against the Titans, I think he's able to throw it down the field. I love Keenan Allen. I love Mike Williams. I don't think it's a double stack a lot of people are going to get to just off of first look at pricing. And then the other stack is Daniel Jones with Darren Waller. I know how bad they played in week 1. Cowboys are just kind of that defense. They're just, that's who they are. They're going to be able to do that against anybody. Terrified for Zach Wilson and that Jets offense in this one. But for the Giants, it's like a clear bounce back week for Daniel Jones.
Yeah, especially against Arizona.
Yeah. It's what the doctor ordered for Fanduel fee on his birthday weekend because you want another repeat of that. So basically, what I hope you've learned over the last few minutes is if you like daily fantasy and you're not already following Jordan, climb out of the rock that you're hiding under and do it. So Jordan, why don't you tell our listeners where they could find you and kind of like, when your articles come out and everything.
So you can find me at the33rdteam.com. I will have a Friday morning show with Alex Caruso where talk about favorite quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end, defense. Saturday mornings is usually when my article will be published, as well as the Cover 5 show that I do with Mark Garcia, known as Hilo FF on Twitter. Both of those will be highly detailed, highly in-depth, kind of the way that we've talked tonight. And then Saturday, I think evening, we will have our top plays get posted, which is a combination of me, Josh Larkey, Ryan Reynolds, and Hilo. Just simple top play sheet where these are the guys that we're kind of all in agreement on. Obviously, last week Hilo tried to get me to play Baker Mayfield. I was just not having it. I did play Mike Evans though. I was in on Mike Evans. Just Baker Mayfield couldn't do it, but we always disagree, and that's what make this game fun. And for our top plays tool, it's kind of our top play sheet. It's just a combination of all of us.
That's awesome. Well, gentlemen, unless you have anything to add, I think we should let Jordan get back to work because I know he's got a lot more to do. So Jordan, thank you so much for coming on. It was great to have you on.
Nice to have you guys. Nice to meet all of you guys, face to face, obviously Twitter, you can't see people's faces on Twitter. It's always a fun little guessing game.
Yeah. There you go. Now when you call into Jeff on Sundays, I could put a face to the other side of the phone call.
That's important. I mean, Jeff and I usually talk ball. I had to call him because the 49ers should be arrested for what they did to the Steelers offense for that first half. I think it was like -1 yards or something. It's like it's absolutely not supposed to happen, but appreciate you guys having me. Hope, you guys win all the money this weekend or your fantasy leagues if you're not going to be playing DFS this weekend.
All right. Thanks.
Sure.
We'll let you go.
Thanks.
All right, gentlemen. That was awesome to pick someone's brain like that because he does a lot more research than we've done in the 4 years of this show. Dut, you still with us?
I'm right here, man. You know me, I'm soaking it in. I'm learning.
I know. Well, we hope you enjoyed that, but you know what? Now that means it is time to move on to the rest of the show. And that means it's time for week 2 of Buy It or Bullshit. We're just going to jump right into it. And before we get into the fresh questions for the week, what we want to go back to one of the questions from last week, because I got asked about it a lot over the weekend. I don't know if you guys did. And then another question. The first question was, do we still believe Sky Moore? Do we still have faith in him? And I guess my question for you, there's no points on this one, but we're revisiting the question. My question for both of you, was it really Sky Moore was bad? Or was it the whole Chiefs offense was bad? Look, Kadarius Toney was bad. He was colossally bad. And if you have him on your fantasy team, you look to get rid of him. Sky Moore had 4 targets and one touch out of the backfield, right? So some of the throws were bad. Mahomes was all over the place. Mahomes was not, mid-season Mahomes.
That's because Aiden Hutchinson was in his face every time he went.
So are we off Sky Moore as still having the potential to break out? Because I don't think I am.
It's week 1. It's hard to say, right? I mean, who's to say if they throw to Sky Moore that maybe he catches it? Because Kadarius Toney couldn't catch a cold, couldn't catch COVID. If you've sneezed on him with COVID from where it originated, like he couldn't catch anything.
He would have handed it to the secondary.
And then he talks smack about the Giants. Who does that? After you have the worst game on national television, you then go talk smack about another team?
What do you got to go after us for? What did we do?
Like, you literally did nothing. That's you. Right. Literally nothing.
You cost your team the game. you dropped the ball that the other team scored with.
You know why Kadarius Toney was, and I said this to other people, we've seen like Bill Buckner. We've seen Scott Norwoods. We've seen memorable bad plays. He had 5 of them, right?
In a row.
Bill Buckner was a very, very good baseball player, and he's going to be remembered for one play. Kadarius Toney was never really good and had 5 of the worst plays in a 20-minute span. You could possibly imagine.
For one game. He's going to be remembered for one game. All right.
Listen,
so Sky Moore, yes, they should use him more. I think we need to see him more.
So right there.
Here's what I'm going to say about Sky Moore and the Chiefs. The problem is they spread the ball around so much. They have so many different guys because there isn't that dominant player, right? They don't have that one go-to guy. They have to go everywhere. So they have 5 different receivers, and Mahomes used all of them. And until Travis Kelce comes back, when they have that dominant guy, I don't think that Sky Moore is going to be very useful for fantasy. When Kelce does come back, he's gonna command that double team, and he's going to command a lot of attention, and that's going to open things up for the Kansas City offense and probably Sky Moore, because he's probably one of the better receivers that they have right now. And
look,
so
everything you said, yeah, I agree with everything you said from an analytics point. Here's the deal: this Sunday, if Patrick Mahomes is dropping back and looking for wide receivers and Kadarius Toney's open and Sky Moore is open, he's throwing it to Sky Moore. Yeah. I'm sorry. He is.
Yeah. But to your point, Fee, it's kind of scary that we haven't heard much about Travis Kelce. I haven't heard anything about him being at practice, and it's like, that's big on ownership. It's like you said, it's big on Sky Moore owners because he's not getting the looks he could. It's big on Kelce owners, and it's big on Mahomes owners.
I'd be shocked if Kelce ended up playing again this week. I think they probably, I think they're probably better off having him sit. Even though they lost that first game, I think they're better off having him sit another week and just try to get at least a little bit more healthy. They do need him. But I think that injury that he had was pretty bad. So, I don't know. I'd be shocked if he played this week.
The other question I got a lot of, and Fee, some of it came from you. We had a conversation about was Raheem Mostert, and everyone was on him because there was the healthy scratch. Jeff Wilson's on the IR. And then, of course, when I said I'm off of Mostert and I said, and the text, I have the text, we could take a screenshot and share it. I said, if Tua is healthy, he's throwing the ball 45 to 50 times. I don't care if they have 1 running back, if they have 5 running backs are not a part of that game. And if you remember last year, they had Chase Edmonds, and I fantasy hate Chase Edmonds, and I was never on him. And that's the way I feel about Mostert. And of course, he scores the touchdown, so he has a 10-point fantasy day. You take away that
12. Yeah, 12.
Yeah, 12. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You take away that touchdown, we're looking at a 5 or 6 point
Six,
day,
right.
depending. if
Yeah,
you're
he didn't do anything.
PPR, you know, and
Yep.
so I'm still off Mostert moving forward. What about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to agree with that. It's funny. I had Mostert in my Fanduel lineup last week, which was a bad idea. He did have the 12 points, which is kind of mediocre. It could have been worse, like you said. But I'd almost have to be off of him going forward because, just for all the reasons that you mentioned, if Miami's going to be throwing the ball 40 times a game, and it seems like they probably are, no matter what, I don't think, there's going to be a point when Tua throws less than 30 times a game, between Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and all the other, weapons that they have on offense. There's really no reason to run the ball.
Yeah.
I'm off of him because he's hurt.
Wow. I mean, everybody's hurt in the NFL.
Well, I'm just saying he's on the injured list now. He's banged up. He's not going to play anyway because of what you said. I mean, he'll play, but he won't score. Move on.
Right. If he doesn't score, he's completely touchdown dependent because he's
right.
Yeah, he's blazing fast. If he breaks that 70-yard run, you're in great shape. Right?
Yeah.
That 70-yard touchdown run. He does have the speed and he has the talent. This isn't a Chase Edmonds situation where Chase
He's
Edmonds,
just on the wrong team.
Yeah.
And no volume.
There's
Right.
not a lot of volume. Right. He had 10 touches and 2 targets.
He's on the wrong team.
Yeah.
So let's move on to some of the buy it or BS questions. And the first one, Dutton, last week you kind of teased the Jets for making fun of them for coming out and saying we're the best defense ever, and they hadn't even played the game yet. Now, boys, who did they play last week at quarterback?
They played elite Josh Allen, who
Josh Allen, and I want to reiterate that I do believe Josh Allen is elite. Because nobody turns the ball over like Josh Allen. I've said it before. I'll say it again, and I'll say it in the future.
He is
the man is a turnover machine, and he
did not look good.
People dismiss his turnover issue.
All right, what's the question? Josh Allen isn't the question.
We're gonna get to Josh Allen though. Are the Jets the Okay, maybe not ever. I agree with you, Dutton. That's saying we're the best ever, but are they the defense of the Ravens, the 49ers of old? Are the Jets that defense this year? Dutton, I'll start with you.
Here's the deal. As a fan of a team that won a Super Bowl because of its defense, yes, the Jets can be that defense this year. They can be the 2000 Baltimore Ravens. They can be the 2002 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They can be that team defensively. To say best ever is hard. And this year it's hard. I mean, the Cowboys are good. They are so fast to the ball. Daniel Jones said hike, and before he got the K, he was getting sacked. It was crazy. So the Jets are really good. Josh Allen had a terrible game. It was also terrible play calling. First of all, Josh Allen should have never thrown the ball in the second half. There was no reason for them to throw the ball. They were up 13-3. Zach Wilson was not going to drive on them and score. So there was no anyway, we can talk about that another time. So no, the Jets are really good. I don't know if they're still the best ever, but they're going to need to be the 2000 Ravens or the 2002 Bucks. I hope they can find Trent Dilfer or Brad Johnson.
They need one of those guys.
Yeah, no, they're not the best ever. They're really, really, really good. But also, Josh Allen was really, really bad. That's not to take away anything from the Jets defense because they were and will be outstanding all year long. But they're not going to be that Bucks team or that Ravens team because they had quarterbacks that were serviceable. Zach Wilson really isn't.
That's what I'm saying. They need to go find.
Yes, right. Yes, they won that game, but I think it had more to do with how bad Josh Allen was versus how good the Jets offense was because it wasn't. Their defense helped out, but again, because it had help from Josh Allen. But the Jets defense is really good, but there are other also really, really good defenses this year, the Cowboys being one of them. And oh, by the way, the Cleveland Browns defense looked fantastic as well this past week against Cincinnati.
Joe Burrow had 86 yards.
I think that may have been more of Cincinnati being on the field together for 4 weeks.
Right.
I'm not taking
That's
anything away
fair.
from the Browns. The Browns played a hell of a game. I agree with you.
Yeah.
But I think the Bengals not playing together for 4 weeks had a lot to do with that.
That's fair. That's fair. But yes, the Jets defense is really, really good. I'm not sure that they're going to be able to take them to a Super Bowl by any means.
I'll give you 5 points each. I agree with everything that was said right there. But I want to stay on the John. Are you guys still on the Josh Allen as an elite quarterback? Here's what's going to happen. He's playing the Raiders next week. Okay. There's 2 Joshes.
He's going to be great. He's going to be great.
Joshes in the NFL. I can't stand. And one of them is worse than the other one in this game. And Josh Allen's not it. So Josh Allen is going to go out and drop 45 points in fantasy. And everyone's going to forget week 1 ever happened. Right? Because that's the Josh Allen effect. He's like the Mandela effect. He makes you somehow forget that he just turned over the ball 4 times in the second half that you said he shouldn't have been throwing the ball at all.
No, he shouldn't have.
Remember, I said he was going to be the 5th or 6th best quarterback at the end of the year in the AFC. Not even. Are you guys still on the elite bus? Fee. This is no points. I'm curious.
No, I'm not.
Josh, a trick question. 8 million points to Fee.
I feel like Josh Allen is like a slightly better version of Daniel Jones.
Sometimes, yeah.
They both turn the ball over way too much. They both run the ball really, really well, and they both have rocket arms. And their decision making is poor, both of them. And I feel like Josh Allen is probably just a little bit better, right? So he's just like a slightly better version of Daniel Jones. Everyone hates Daniel Jones so much. I don't. I also don't hate Josh Allen either. I think he's very good, but he's not. I just don't think he's elite. That's all.
Dutton.
So in my head, while Fee was talking, I was trying to think of a comparison. So to answer your question, I'm going to answer it weirdly. Is he an elite quarterback in the NFL right now? No. Is he an elite athlete? Yes. Does he have the talent to be an elite quarterback? 100%. Is he living up to that talent? No way. My comparison in my head, and I'd have to go look at stats, because you know me, I don't look at stats at all. I just make up things in my head and see if they stick. I would love to compare Josh Allen to John Elway in his early days.
Yeah.
Right? Because John Elway came in and had an elite arm, could throw the ball through a wall, right? Like, led his team to some AFC championships, led his team to a Super Bowl, but then turned the ball over a whole bunch of times in that Super Bowl against the Giants, turned the ball a whole bunch of time against the Redskins when they were the Redskins. So I would like to see that comparison and see if Josh is going to mature. I really, really think Josh Allen not having Brian Daboll as his offensive coordinator is why we have the Josh Allen we have.
That's fair. And that's fair. And I think the John Elway thing is interesting. The one thing I will say about Elway compared to Josh Allen is Elway made bad choices, but he took chances. He did things he knew he wasn't supposed to do, but he thought he could do. Josh Allen, just sometimes you're out there and you're like, what did he just do? Right?
When he jumped the other day, why did he jump thinking he was going to jump 12 yards?
like you're just like, what did you just do, man?
It's the decision making, right?
Right.
They had the ball on the Jets' 45-yard line, and he decides to throw a 50-yard bomb into double coverage into the end zone that gets intercepted.
Right.
Throw the ball 5 yards, dump it off, get 5 more yards, get to the 40 or 35, and kick a field goal.
Mm-hmm.
Make it 16-3 instead of launching a bomb.
It was a bad
double coverage.
Let's just say this: if that was Josh Allen's tape,
what's the point of that? He wasn't even under pressure.
If that was Josh Allen's tape to bring to Wayne as evidence of why he's elite, we just failed, right? We just failed. Like, that was a terrible exhibition of Josh Allen performance.
I think that what it comes down to is what people use. I had a friend of mine, this is many, many years ago, write an article. His name is Keith Ballmer, about superstar is the most overused word in sports. And I think that shifted from superstar to elite. And I think it's what's your definition of elite? Is Josh Allen a top half quarterback in the NFL? Absolutely. Is he a fun fantasy quarterback? Most of the time. Is he top 3? No, right? And
Not right
it's
now.
kind of
He's
like
not.
the MLB Hall of Fame. You know, they always say it's the Hall of Very Good or the Hall of Fame. If you
Right.
have to have that conversation, then you're probably not it, right?
Yeah.
When you said Peyton Manning, there was never, well, let me see, is he elite? No, yes. The answer is yes. If you have to have that conversation, you're probably not elite. That's the way I see it. Is he still very good? Of course he's very good. Do I go a little bit over the edge on the show to make fun of him?
Well,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's fun for you though because it's working
Yes.
right now.
Right.
It's a good narrative for you
But
to
I
keep
do
juggling.
100% stand by the fact that he is not elite, and I think he gets easily forgiven because he's going to have a crazy, stupid Josh Allen game against the Raiders this week.
Of course he is. And that's
Earth.
his thing. Like he's told, and he's not going to throw the ball more than 12 yards down the field this week, right? He's not going to take any risks. He's going to dink and dunk for 360 yards and 5 touchdowns, and he's going to run for like 45 safe yards where he gets out of bounds. Like, you know, it's going to happen.
Of course. Speaking of quarterbacks, Joe Burrow, Daniel Jones looked like poo-poo last week. They have much juicier matchups this week. What do we think? Fee, we'll start with you. Both bounce back this week? One bounce back? I think both bounce back this week. Fee, both bounce back this week. Buy it or BS?
Yeah, no, I'm buying it. I think they do both bounce back. I think Burrow will have a better game than Daniel Jones will, but I think they both will have very good games. And it's because of the teams that they're playing, right? I mean, the Giants are taking on Arizona, and they can't be as bad as they were last week. And I feel like they'll take that to heart and play slightly better. But also they won't be playing against an elite defense that's going to kill them too. So I think that they both bounce back this week. Yep.
Dutton?
They both bounce back. I actually think Daniel Jones may bounce back even a little bit higher than Joe Burrow this week. Here's the thing. The Giants make that field goal on that first drive. That's a completely different game Sunday night. Because they drove down the field. Daniel Jones was smart, got the ball where he needed to. They got 3 points out of it. They get to kick, and then they get to play defense. But nope, never happened, right? And then it was just a snowball effect of disaster for Giants fans.
Yep.
So I think they both bounce back, and I think Daniel Jones actually puts up more points than Joe Burrow, only because the Giants are going to score more points, I think, than the Bengals this week.
I like it. 800 points for each of you. I'm going to read you a quote. Let the fantasy guys worry about that. We've got to clean some things up. We don't care. Drake London doesn't care. All we care about is 1-0. This was Arthur Smith, Falcons head coach, in response to why actually the question was, why did Ritter have more catches than Drake London? When, of course, Ritter's catch was to himself when the ball was batted. And my take is that Arthur Smith is delusional and unfit to be a head coach with all the talent they have. Dutton, buy it or BS. Arthur Smith is not the right guy for the Falcons.
Buying it.
Are you there? Done?
We lost Dutton sound.
Can you hear me?
There you go.
There you go.
Can you hear me now? My headphones died. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Go, keep going.
He is delusional and unfit to be a head coach. I'm totally buying it. He didn't use Bijan Robinson. Who's this Algiers guy? Where did he come from? What's that about? Like, Bijan Robinson made one play, and it was the most electric play of the 1 o'clock.
So fun. Oh, it was so great.
And then we never saw him again. Yeah, he doesn't know what he's doing. Drake London needs to catch the ball. He hasn't. Kyle Pitts, remember him? He's on the team.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that. Yeah, I'm buying it also, but because of basically everything Dutton said. I mean, where is Kyle Pitts? Where is Drake London? Where's Bijan Robinson? Like Dutton said, he made this electric play, and all of a sudden you're like, well, we'll just toss him in there a couple times.
Yeah.
Like what's he doing? And yes, Tyler Algier, he's been around. He was around last year. He ran for 1,000 yards. We talked about it on our previous episode, the preview show that we had. We were talking about the Falcons. We were talking about how they run the ball, and Bijan was going to be amazing because they're so good at running the ball. And now it turns out they want to kind of have Algier run the ball a lot and try to ease in Bijan, but either one of those guys is going to run the ball effectively in that Falcons offense. It's just that you got the wrong guy doing it because Bijan's amazing, and we saw it. So, you got to use that to your advantage.
It's calling for the Warwick Dunn Mike Allstott effect, where you just have to draft them both.
But it's fine if they do that and they use them right. My problem was he said, let the fantasy guys worry about it. It's a legitimate question when you have 3 top 10 draft picks in a row not getting the volume they deserve to be getting.
Right.
And for him to brush it off as one of those Maurice Jones-Drew when he downed himself at the 1-yard line and everyone was like, why didn't you score? Let the fantasy guys worry about that. Yes, MJD, you're right there. This was a legit. You have 3 of the most young, talented players in the NFL based on where you drafted them, and you don't use them. And you're going to put it on fantasy people worrying about it? You played a rookie quarterback whose team was completely banged up, and you're going to talk about getting to 1-0. Take a breath, Arthur Smith. You need to take a step back and look at the team and look at your roster and figure out how to win real ball games. No offense, Panthers. You're just not there yet. All right. 1,000,000 points to both of you. You guys both tied. You gave great answers. We're going to move on. We're going to do locks of the week and starts and sits a little quicker than usual, just because, we had so much fun with Jordan and we want to keep this show to about an hour. So locks of the week. Last week we did great. I took the Falcons and won. Fee, you took the Titans and won. And overall, we're 1-0 on the year. We took the Lions.
I took the freaking Bills, and I was all set when Rodgers went down.
Oh wait, I'll start things off. I'm sticking with our guys, man. I'm going Lions -6 against the Seahawks. Fee, you already said you like that matchup. I agree with you before you.
I like it.
So I like the Lions -6. Dutton, what do you got this week?
I'm going with the Pack at the Falcons. I mean, why not?
Let the fantasy guys worry about it.
That's right. Now play a real team.
You're right. Fee.
I want to take Kansas City -3 against the Jaguars. I think that they try to come back from having such a poor week in week 1.
We talked about it. The Chiefs are sometimes slow starters. They got their slow start, and they are a team that we see make adjustments better than pretty much anyone else in the NFL. Is this the week they do it? Like we said, it's been very quiet about Kelsey, and I think that's a big factor. So who do we want to lock in as the pick of the week? I'm going.
Until they let us down, we are locking in the Lions.
I'm in. That means we usually do FanDuel Fees stacks of the week, but we already did that. So now we're moving on to starts and the sits. Last week we killed it on who to sit. We struggled. We didn't do terribly, but we struggled on starts. And I think everybody would probably tell you they did. We told you to start Goff, which was a good start. We told you to start Dobbins, which unfortunately got injured. And then we told you to start Lockett, who disappeared. And then, of course, Waller. Actually, Waller was the best receiver on the Giants, but fantasy-wise, that's not anything. Our sits, we crushed it. Daniel Jones, Alexander Madison, Hollywood Brown, and the aforementioned invisible Kyle Pitts. So we definitely told you who to sit. We did well there. So let's get started. Starts of the week. Dutton, quarterback. I see you have someone we like. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going with Jared Goff this week against Seattle because last week you didn't get a great game against the Chiefs, but that Seattle defense was disappointing last week. And the Lions offense is better than the Rams offense, I think. So
I agree with you. Fee.
I'm going with Anthony Richardson this week. He looked good last week. They're playing Houston's not great defense. So yeah, I'm gonna roll with Anthony Richardson this week and hope he runs the ball more.
I could tell you why I disagree with you now, or when we get to my sit for wide receiver. Which do you want?
Now.
Lamar Jackson had 148 yards passing, and 90 of those yards went to Zay Flowers, who did most of the work himself on short passes.
Mm-hmm.
The Texans' defense is a lot better than you think it is. I will agree. Anthony Richardson looked great last week. For a rookie, I thought he was way better than I thought he was going to be. Him and Pittman have a real nice connection. I think people are sleeping on the Texans. I think the Texans have a few winnable games, and I think this is one of them. And I think what they have that they haven't had in the last 2 years is a coach that knows how to motivate them to win the games that they can. And I think,
hey, even when they were losing last week, they were in that game.
They were
playing hard. They were playing hard. Yeah, they were in it.
I think Richardson's in trouble. My start of the week, we already talked about in depth. I think he's a huge bounce back guy, but I'm going Danny Dimes. I think he has too much talent to have that bad.
I like it.
Goff, Jones, or Richardson.
Goff.
Goff. Let's do it.
I like Goff.
All right,
I
Goff.
knew we weren't going to get a Danny Dimes out of Fee.
Goff was part of my FanDuel stacks. So
No, that's
There you
fair.
go.
That's fair. Fee, why don't you start us on running backs?
I really like James Cook this week for Buffalo against Las Vegas. Las Vegas couldn't stop anybody last week, and I think that maybe the Bills try to run the ball a little more. But James Cook was out there 3 downs. They'll throw to him too. Like you guys said, Josh Allen dinking and dunking down the field. James Cook should get a lot of that run too. So I'm starting James Cook.
Dutton.
Barkley against the Cardinals because the Giants are going to have that game in hand by the second half, and Barkley will get a lot of touches after that.
You might be right. I'm going to use what Jordan said earlier in the show, and I'm starting Ramondre Stevenson. It's like he said against the Chargers ran all over the Dolphins. They had 2 guys almost run for 100 yards. If you're worried about 2 guys on the Patriots, well, maybe they both could do the same thing. So I'm going with Stevenson. I could lock in any one of these guys. Which one you want to go with?
I like Cook because he ran so well against the Jets. He should have got the ball more in the second half.
Let's go with Cook.
Yeah.
I'll start wide receiver. I think both Bobby Trees, Robert Woods, and Nico Collins. I think Nico Collins might get the TD and make me look bad, but I'm going with Bobby Trees because it really looked like CJ Stroud really trusted Robert Woods, and he had a really good game. And I thought Robert Woods was just going to be there as a distraction, but they had a really nice connection. So I'm going with Robert Woods. Dutton.
I'm going with Chris Godwin against the Bears because they couldn't stop the Packers last week, and Baker Mayfield actually looked pretty good.
I want to roll with Zay Flowers going against the Cincinnati Bengals. Good connection with Lamar.
I like that one.
Yeah, I mean, he looked great last week as a rookie. Like I said, they had a great connection. You're right. He had 6 receptions for 90 yards. We could go Flowers. It's crazy this week because I saw 4 tight ends I actually like starting. I see Fee, you have one of them, so I'll let you talk on him and I won't mention him. So go ahead.
Yeah, I really like Laporta this week for
Molan.
Detroit. I didn't mention him when I was talking about stacks, but you could totally throw him in there with Goff. I just think that Detroit is going to have a big game against Seattle this week. And they're playing at home too, by the way. They're playing in Detroit. So
home opener.
Dutton.
Sold out. I'm going with Dalton Kincaid against the Raiders because I'm buying into the Josh Allen not throwing the ball deep down the field, and he's got 2 tight ends, and he's going to use the rookie.
Yeah. So I had Laporta. I really like Luke Musgrave. It looked like him and Jordan Love had a nice little connection there. But I think my start of the week is Hayden Hurst. For 4 years on this show, we've talked about how we like tight ends with rookie quarterbacks. Last week that showed. Hurst had a touchdown. They had a really good connection. I think that continues against the Saints. So I'm going to say Hayden Hurst. But it's crazy that I think there's several good tight end matchups this week. You don't hear that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We want to lock in Laporta? I'm good with that.
Yeah, I like it. Laporta.
All right, your 3 and out starts of the week are Jared Goff, James Cook, Zay Flowers, and Sam Laporta. Let's move on to sits where we dominated last week. Dutton, we'll start with you.
Okay, listen, most people are going to be sitting him, and the only reason I put him in here is because, and I know we don't bash
most people are going to sit him. I think people still start him.
ESPN has him ranked as the 6th highest quarterback this week.
Yeah, that's why I think people still.
That's crazy to me. Justin Fields, sit Justin Fields against the Bucs because that is crazy. I'm sorry, did you see Justin Fields play last week?
Yeah, not many people saw him actually play. They saw him on the field.
He was in the game,
right? Fee, I think yours is interesting, but I agree with it.
Yeah, I gotta sit Dak Prescott against the Jets. We talked about how the Jets defense is very, very good, and I don't care that Zach Wilson is starting as their quarterback for their offense, because even if they do nothing and the Cowboys get up big, that just means they're going to run the ball even more.
Right.
And oh, by the way, Dak didn't do jack. They scored 40 points, and I know a lot of them were on defense and special teams, but they scored 40 points against the Giants, and Dak had 6 fantasy points last week.
Yeah.
So now they're playing an actual defense against a really good Jets team. I got to sit Dak.
I'm gonna sit Kirk Cousins short turnaround. I mean, he's Kirk Cousins. We know he doesn't do back-to-back good games, I feel like. But the short turnaround against the Eagles, who I think the Eagles are probably going to be a little angry the way they played. They played
Didn't play well.
Right. They didn't play the way that we expected the Eagles to come out to play. Cousins, Fields, or Dak. I'd love to sit Dak. I think that's the call.
Let's do it. Sit Dak. I don't agree with it, but let's go bold.
Okay.
Ooh.
Running back.
Dak's gonna be a good game. I do, but anyway.
Fee, running back. I like that we have a little conflict. We could go back to this next week. Fee,
That's fine.
running back.
I'm sitting Mostert this week. Jordan talked about it earlier, and we all did, but the Dolphins are gonna throw the ball, and New England's defense is really good again this year. So sit Mostert this week.
Done.
Go to you first.
You want me to go? Kyron Williams, 49. I'm sorry, he's on the Rams. They're playing the 49ers. He had 2 touchdowns last week. I think he's probably a big waiver wire pickup, and everyone's going to be in love with him. And I don't think he does that again. Little fool's gold, little Fanduel fee fool's gold. We haven't whipped out a
Fool's gold, baby.
Fool's gold in a while.
Sitting. Is this Marvin Jones against the Falcons? I believe I'm sitting.
I don't know. You tell me. No, Marvin Jones.
No.
Aaron
No.
Jones.
Aaron
Who?
Jones, right?
Aaron Jones against the Falcons. Packers. Sitting
You're
Aaron
big, we have to tell you.
I was all confused. It's been a long day. Aaron Jones against the Falcons. He's injured. He's banged up, and he's not going to have the week he had last week because the Packers need him so Jordan Love can be good next week. So I think.
Well, let me ask you this: if Aaron Jones is ruled out tomorrow, remember this is Wednesday night. If he's ruled out tomorrow, what do you think about AJ Dillon? Is he a start?
I don't know. I'm kind of with your buddy Jordan. I'm not a big AJ Dillon fan.
Me too.
So, yeah,
I don't. So I think we let's say Green Bay running backs. I think
fit the Green Bay running back. I like it.
that's why I asked that. Who do we want to be our consensus sit?
I'm down with sitting the Green Bay running
Yeah,
backs.
Green Bay.
Okay, yeah, especially if it's Dillon. Wide receiver, I already talked about it. Pittman. I think it's the Texans upset, just because of the the way that they handled the pass last week. Dutton.
It's funny because I said play Dak, but I want to sit CeeDee Lamb. I don't think he can beat the Jets cornerback. So there you go.
Interesting, Dutton. Interesting.
Dak might score other ways. So
Big.
I want to sit Garrett Wilson
Love
this
it.
week.
Love it.
Listen, Garrett Wilson is an amazing, amazing talent. He's going to be an incredible wide receiver. But with Zach Wilson throwing the ball against the ridiculous Dallas defense,
That's what it is right there.
Forget
Dallas
about it.
defense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate it because he's so good, but
Right, but it's the Dallas defense and the combo of Zach Wilson. If Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback against it, then you'd play him.
I think it's bold. Either Garrett Wilson or CeeDee Lamb. They're both second round picks. Pittman. I think is a good sit because I'm all on the upset train. But
I'm sitting Garrett.
Let's take Lamb or Garrett Wilson. Which one do you think it is?
Garrett Wilson.
All right. Tight ends. Dutton, I'll let you start.
Yeah, I'm sitting Zach Ertz from the Cardinals against the Giants. Why am I sitting Zach Ertz? Because I think Zach Ertz wants to retire because his wife's retired now, and I don't think Zach Ertz wants to play much more football for a bad team anymore.
He had a lot of targets though last week. Like he had a good fantasy week because he had 6 receptions for like 21 yards. I think it was 6 receptions.
Right.
Fee.
I want to sit Tyler Higbee this week playing the 49ers. The 49ers defense, especially their linebackers, really, really good. And they're just really good cover linebackers. So I want to sit Tyler Higbee this week.
Look, this is my sit. This until they finally figure it out.
I agree with it.
Nothing to do with the player. It has nothing to do with the player, but until the Falcons figure out, Kyle Pitts will be at tight end for the rest of this year until he has the big week. I'm not kidding.
And this week it doesn't help. He's playing a really good defense with the Packers. He is with Kyle Ritter as quarterback who has to play a real defense now, right?
Yeah. So let's review our lock of the week is once again the Lions giving 6 to the Seahawks. Our starts: Jared Goff at quarterback, James Cook at running back, Zay Flowers at wide receiver, Sam Laporta at tight end, and our sits: Dak Attack at quarterback, the Green Bay backfield, whichever one starts, or if they both start, don't start either of them. Against the Falcons, wide receiver is Garrett Wilson, and then tight end is Kyle Pitts. Gentlemen, that was a fun show. We didn't overreact too much because we all agreed that Josh Allen is no longer elite. Welcome to the team, boys. Welcome to the team. We did it in an hour, even with the special guests, and we hope you go win some money. We hope you win some games. Gentlemen, anything to add before we sign off?
No, good luck this week.
Baker Mayfield won a game and he won the Angry Run of the Week on NFL Network. What is happening in Tampa Bay?
Tampa Bay to the Super Bowl, everybody. We'll see you.
Baker, baby.
Baker, baby. Yeah, he'll be hurt by next week. Don't worry.
See you for week 3.